Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I will be talking about Dark Moon by David Gemmell, which is one of Gemmell's standalone books. I was very excited to read this because I've just been enjoying Drenai so much, and this one was recommended to me, so decided to pick it up. This is the one, if you hadn't seen, when I mentioned it before, I bought online, and it turned out it was signed. So even though it's not in the greatest condition, and it's older, I was still just overjoyed at getting a random signed copy I didn't know I was actually getting, so it all worked out. So this one was pretty different, I would say, from Drenai, from what I've read so far, while also still definitely having that Gemmell style. This one is a lot more, or has a lot more high fantasy elements, while still really focusing on like the human condition as well. The Drenai books are obviously fantasy, and there are fantasy elements. This one, though, is a little bit more so. It takes place on a world where there were originally three magical races, basically. The Eldarin, the Ultar, and the Daroth. And as we find in the story, and this part is talked about in the blurb too, just for the record, so we're not doing spoilers, but the Ultar were completely destroyed and wiped out by the Daroth, who are just basically like your, evil incarnate, just live to kill, until the Eldarin managed to basically stop the Daroth. But then humanity, being what it is, eventually decided that they needed to pick a fight with the Eldarin, and then the Eldarin too disappeared, leaving humanity all alone on its own. But when the Daroth end up returning, humanity once again then is on their own to try to stop from being completely destroyed. And so that's kind of the base plot here, which once again has a lot more of the high fantasy elements in it than Drenai did, which I really enjoyed. It had more high fantasy and also felt like a little bit dark fantasy compared to Drenai, which is very much heroic fantasy. This still deals with some heroes, but it's a bit more complicated with our characters here. We have Tarantio, who has some sort of like demon or alter persona that's in his mind that he can switch and have take over his body, which is what's helped him become one of the deadliest swordsmen. We have Karis, who is a brilliant strategist in general, but has her own kind of tortured past as well and issues she's dealing with. And then we have Duvadas, who is trained or was trained by Eldarin and wants to just be peaceful and plays music, but gets pulled into events and forced into events out of his control as well. And so we follow these characters, all who are very distinct and have really distinct journeys within the story as well. And as with most Gemmell books that I've started, I enjoy them pretty quickly, but it takes a bit for me to be like, okay, where are we actually going with this? And this one did that same thing, and it's once you get into it, you're like, oh, this is really good, and then you get to the end, and it's just like, what is even happening? Gemmell is just fantastic at the finale, at finishing books, and this is certainly not an exception by any means. This is the kind of story that things aren't going to necessarily go the way that you're thinking they're going to go. It will keep you guessing, and it's not really even that there are twists or anything like that. It's just he's taken this story and it's just more complicated than you think. And when you think like, oh, this is probably going to happen, because that's the kind of thing that normally happens, it may or may not. And Drenai is really good for that too, because Drenai deals with a lot of those kind of topics like last stands and big battles and that kind of thing, and it doesn't always necessarily end the way you would think it's going to there as well. And so the exploration here of the world and also just these characters and the fight and the depth of even some of the side characters, and we see changes that they go through as everyone's just trying to cope, was really, really fantastic. And the ending to this one is just really, like I said, what bumped it up. It's pretty normal. I feel like Gemmell books tend to always be rocking about 4 stars by default, because I'm always interested right away. Things just keep ramping up, and then by the end it just shoots it over into that 5-star. Is what I've had for quite a lot of his books. I don't think I've actually had a Gemmell book that's been less than 4 stars for me so far. And hopefully I won't, because I've been really enjoying all the Gemmell I've been reading and going from there. This book, though, getting back to actually talking about, Dark Moon, what the review is about, does a lot of interesting things, and like I said, still has that Gemmell style, where we're looking at these characters, and the way Gemmell writes characters and kind of the deep introspection into these characters as they go through their journeys is something I think that really, really just works super well for me. We have a really interesting plot that's going on as well, but he manages to still have a concise but really well-rounded plot while doing a ton of character development and focus there as well. And as with a lot of his stories, the characters are very, very central to what's going on here. And it's some different explorations than what we normally see. It's a lot of the Drenai books, or most of them are usually, it's, soldiers, a lot of them old soldiers, but soldiers, battles, that kind of thing. And we have some of that here. One of our main characters is a general and mercenary leader, and so we definitely get some battles there. But even for her, it's not really just that we're focusing on. We're focusing on so much more depth with these characters, including a couple of very small side characters that make a couple of appearances that just really help as well. And it's really each of the characters ends up going through, I feel like, a different journey than what you're necessarily expecting. Once again, some of the stuff may seem familiar at the start here, but I'm always just amazed when I read a book like this that is not particularly new or anything. I mean, obviously, David Gemmell is deceased now, so it can't be any time recent, but this is from 88. Look, wait a minute. No, that's not. No, never mind. I lied. 96. So this is from 1996. So, this is a book that's, 20, 25, 26 years old. If I remember how to do math. So nearly 30 years old, and yet it's when I read a book like this and I think I see familiar things, but it still feels fresh. And Gemmell is really great about taking tropes and just getting a different spin on them, which is what I've really enjoyed about reading his books. And this one too, because Drenai are, even though it's a series, they are mostly standalones, but they also do build off of things that are established in the other books. This one sets up, like I said, actually a lot more fantastical elements, really interesting and completely different fantasy races that play an important role in the world in general, the kind of the systems of magic and the different parts there. It's just so much is done in this short of a page count, and I've had a few books lately that are shorter and still just pack such a punch, and that's really something that has been great. I still want to read like a really long Gemmell book. I assume some of his are at least longer, but a lot of them are short just to see, but he is the master of getting quite a lot in a pretty small size. This is like just over 300 pages, which is what most of the Drenai books are. And this is hardcover, so I don't know what it would be with paperback. But once again, pretty short. Also, I haven't actually mentioned, has a really interesting cover and back cover there, just the art here as well. And so it's just another win. Very much for me. I would definitely recommend this for anybody who has read Gemmell and enjoys Gemmell, of course, but those who want a dark fantasy that has still some probably of the heroic elements, but on a really different spin, and just that kind of thing. We're still dealing with battles and fighting, but this is, like I said, a lot more of the high fantasy elements and kind of dark fantasy feel to this. So for fans of that, I would definitely recommend this as one to check out. It is completely a standalone, not part of a series, and just feels like actually completely a standalone. It's pretty short, so I definitely recommend it. This is definitely a great book. It was 5 stars for me, which it had a good chance doing it anyway. And like I said, the ending was just really, really good here. The way different events tied up, the way different characters finished their character journeys, just everything came together really nicely here in a very satisfying way, but also, like I said, not necessarily the way that you would expect some of the events to happen, because the way Gemmell writes, it's just usually, it's not that things don't make sense or they're twists, it's just he may go in a direction you think he's going, or he may go a completely different direction, and I definitely do appreciate that. really, those are my thoughts on Dark Moon by David Gemmell. I'm really glad that this one was recommended to me. So if you have another David Gemmell recommendation for me, or I mean, you can always let me know recommendations in general. I'm still going to be working on finishing up Janai, and I've heard really good things about his Troy trilogy, and I want to try Brigante, but if anybody has any other of like the standalones that stand out to you, definitely let me know, and I'll try to make sure to check those out. But that is what I have on this one. So make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description, as always, for the Wizardly Duo Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, any books, really anything at all. It is a lot of fun, and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.